Being Human with Algorithms, today with Christian Thiel and Dominik Golle, Center Digitisation Bavaria. Christian and Dominik, could you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Of course. So my name is Christian Thiel. I'm a scientist in machine learning. I did my PhD on emotion recognition, on faces, and on recognizing cricket songs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can tell the biodiversity of habitat from the plentifulness of songs.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yep.
Maybe we come back to that later. And Dominik?
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm Dominik. I'm also one of the coordinators of the unit for consumer affairs here at Center for Digitisation Bavaria. I hold a degree in public policy, so naturally my interest in technology is always the impact on society at large. And also I'm data protection officer here.
Nice. Very good. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion, because this is also the interview series is always about people, and it's a very nice constellation of people here. And also you're really into the topic of the digital transformation, and so therefore the first question is, which effects of this digital transformation that is ongoing are most prominent to you? What are you perceiving there?
So when we started, we had a very broad look and found very many things that are going on today. But we thought what is really the most important topic at the moment is network products and Internet of Everything. Mm-hmm. So that now everything gets connected, all my things get connected, and also that all services that are provided will only be provided in a way that very many networked companies and sensors work together to provide these services. Mm-hmm. And this means we have a decentralization of technology, because all those small sensors are everywhere, but we have a centralization of information, and for that also a centralization of knowledge and power. Mm-hmm. And coming with the network products, we will have digital marketplaces where information is exchanged, where I can buy services, where perhaps my algorithms of my fridge can buy services. And we have algorithms that will be running the show, that will really make the majority of the decisions. Mm-hmm. So this is for us the central topic of the digital transformation today, concerning consumers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's you already raised many interesting points that we'll come to. And the next question is always, which are the chances that you see that come with this digital transformation? You already raised some possible concerns, and so what could be the chances that you have there?
Mm-hmm. So we are always looking at this from a consumer perspective, and now looking at the smart home speech assistants, which is what we're focusing on right now, we see it's going to be much easier to communicate with all the things that are going to be connected with the internet, because you don't need clumsy text interfaces in the future, or already now we're starting there. You have speech assistants, you have various ways that the devices just talk to each other and really make our lives easier. Even recommend things to you, how maybe you could live a healthier or happier life, which always also comes with risks, of course. Mm-hmm.
And risks is exactly the next cue. So what are the risks that you see there?
The main challenge there that the network products, they're highly complex. They got to work together, and this is a challenge because for the consumer there is no transparency anymore. Which part of the product does which job, and which data needs to go where to affect and help me. That also means, as a consumer, when I buy a service or product, I don't know with whom exactly I got the contract. Is it provider of the thing I'm talking to, or of the back end, or of the 7 services that have to work together? Mm-hmm. And if something goes wrong, who do I have to sue? Where can I get my money back or compensation if I got something broken? Mm-hmm. And apart from the the network measure also means that we have more surface for cybersecurity attacks, for cybersecurity threats. So the high complexity is the main risk. When we are looking at the products, they work connected and they have to be constantly online, transmitting data into the cloud, into the other services. So I don't know which data is flowing. I just know that there has to be a lot of data flowing around me for things to work. And last point for that, the data flowing will then lead to automated decisions. Which can be good, and over time people also go into trusting these decisions, perhaps even to the extent that they trust the decisions and do not question them anymore, even though the data or the algorithm could be flawed.
Okay, so this is very interesting, because you were going into the direction of the assistants, and you were going into having this data, and then the risk of where is the data, and decisions and trust and so on. And when you consider this as a timeline, so we are on something from before we had the digital transformation, I mean, whenever that was, because basically the digital transformation, if we look at the first interview that I did in the series, it started way 100 years ago. But when we think about this, what we now see more in the closer sense of the digital transformation, so what would you say, how far are we? Because these speech assistants, this is something that popped up maybe 1 year ago. The products from the bigger companies were there in the private sector, and how would you say is it in the industrial sectors?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because, last week I went to a pitch night by the Danish consulate here in Munich, and it was all about robotics. And there you could see that in the industrial sector we see a lot of robotic assistants that really work autonomously. They can use elevators, they move over the entire area of the plant and so on. And this is really something where you see, now we have it in industry, and it's only a matter of a couple of years, I believe, until we have these systems also in our homes, and then in almost private spaces.
And is it and so you would say the industry is ahead of the private sector, probably also because of cost factors, or do you also see other factors that play a role there? Is it like that the industry is adapting faster because the people are forced to do it? Maybe is this also an issue, or is it really that you think, okay, they are first because technology is expensive, and then when it becomes cheaper, then it also comes to the homes, or is it maybe something totally different?
I think it's really, from what I saw there, I'm not an expert on robotics, but it was really due to the fact that the workplace environment is much more structured than any home, and you can easily have visual cues for the robot and so on, so that makes it much easier for robots to interact safely in such an environment. It's similar to autonomous driving, which works very well on a highway, but not so well in a city. So
that means it's like there's just more infrastructure that is given, and it's also probably more homogeneous in the sense that they have equipment from one manufacturer maybe, or from a few of them that follow some standards, and therefore it's easier to have the interoperability and to really implement that. Okay. And so on the timeline, what would you say? Is it that there is like still, I mean, this is a totally philosophical question, but is it like, did we see a lot already, or do you think like in the upcoming years we will have even more fundamental and bigger changes that will be happening in this direction? I'm also thinking about that when you talk about the digital transformation, there's also often that people say it's a very disruptive process. And this disruption might be something that we only see in some years when we look back at, okay, what happened then? Okay, it was really disruptive. Personally, I'm perceiving it not so much disruptive, but more as an evolution. So now I got an assistant, and the assistant is partly doing what I did. Maybe 1 year later, I'm totally used to it, and I think like, okay, asking the assistant for a recipe is totally normal, even though 1 year ago I didn't have this device. So how is the perception for you? Is it disruptive? Do you think it will become disruptive, or do you see the trend at the moment that it's more evolutionary and some processes will change?
When we are looking at the numbers, like 2 years ago, there were no smart speech assistants in the households. Now, even in Germany, there's around 20% household penetration of these assistants. So it's coming very, very, very fast. like the phones came, the mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
So from the rollout perspective, it's really disruptive. And you could, when you're just focusing on the assistants, you can also say it will be even more disruptive in the future, because they will be becoming the new tool to access information.
Mm-hmm.
And you will not have a screen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You will not have choices of 10 results and the ads. You will only have one answer.
Mm-hmm.
This, if you're taking it to the extreme, that will pull really the floor out of the ad revenue market model of the internet at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's
if it really
interesting.
comes this way, it can be totally disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not yet looked at the other uses you can have with robots in your home, or
Mm-hmm.
with the regulation of the environment.
Mm-hmm. And which are the main players at the moment in this game? So we definitely have like Google, we have Amazon, and
Mm-hmm.
whom else do we have? Is there diversification at the moment? So Apple, of course. Okay, so these are the three major companies from the US, and
Yeah.
so if I think about it, when I would buy a home whatever assistant device,
Mhm.
it would probably be from these three companies. Does Facebook have something in line? I'm not
No.
aware of it.
Not at the moment, I think.
Okay, and
I mean, there's all those established players, like
Yeah.
the local Bosch company.
mhm.
They also have home automation products, but they have all the technology for home automation, the sensors, the actors. So far, they did not invest in the voice
Mhm.
interface.
And probably they're also more for specialized markets, like in the car. So I would expect that probably I find some voice control maybe from Bosch that is in a Daimler car or a VW car, but at least I'm not aware of a HomePod of.
It's not a consumer brand
Yes.
in the end, yeah.
Yes.
But the technology for the voice in the cars often comes from the Nuance company. So
Mhm.
there's not so many companies that
Yeah.
do voice recognition.
Yes.
And also the home automation companies, they still have the focus on doing everything in-house,
Mhm.
not giving data to the outside.
Yes. Mhm. Okay, and so this is also of course related to this question, namely of having just a few players that doing this voice recognition. So far, often or at least in these three companies, parts of the voice recognition and especially of the service are offered in the cloud, as you said it before.
Mhm.
So the data is sent there, and there were recently these scandals that one found out that magically there are some people sitting and they are listening to what you're saying there, and they are not only recording when you said the magic word, of course, because they want to have good service, and so it's like they have to pre-record and so on, and it's clear that they are surveying the people, and still the people seem not to be too concerned. Which reminds me a little bit to this Edward Snowden revelations, where it was like, as computer scientists, at least I was like totally shocked. I was like, oh my god, now the world has serious trouble, and then 3 weeks later it was out of press. And do you think with the home assistants it's already out of press? I would have the impression. So it's not that the consumers are too much concerned, or would you say they are still?
Well, it's usually in the press for some time, then it gets forgotten and people get used to it. So we take a little bit of another approach. We try to find the companies who really want to provide technology more consumer friendly, and we try to help them to do, because it's often really not an easy problem doing speech recognition completely offline, for example.
Yes.
There needs to be more research, and we are the ones then taking this research and trying to test it, to prototype it, and see what are the problems when you do that, and what can you learn from that.
Yes,
and so this is kind of the approach we take.
So you're like advocating a little bit for the people to protect them a bit from the company Wild West. Maybe is
that's
that
part of the approach,
yes.
But it's also making the World Wide West more friendly by teaching the companies how to achieve the same results by incorporating more privacy-friendly technologies.
Yeah, and then, so as we already came a little bit to it, so how do you here shape this digital transformation? So what are the aspects that, I mean, you started already with the contributions. So
Yeah, we wanted to draw a little bit of a bigger picture because we are part of a larger institution.
Yes.
So the Center for Digitization Bavaria is an institution of the Bavarian government, and we are tasked to really push forward digitalization in the entire state. And this we do by transferring knowledge from academia into practice and vice versa. And it's a very practical approach where you see, okay, there's new knowledge, how can we test it, what can we learn from it, and how do we get companies on the ground to use the new knowledge and make innovation out of inventions from science, basically.
Oh, that's nice.
And this is a really interesting task where we are structured in different topic areas. So we have units on consumer protection as ours, but also on digitalization, energy, medicine, future of work, digitalization of cultural institutions. So it's a very broad field, and we bring together many of the most relevant ministries in Bavaria who deal with digitalization, which is also really exciting. From a science perspective, the Center for Digitization Bavaria funds 20 new professors here in Bavaria, 10 junior research groups, and every year 10 fellows who do their dissertation on digitalization topics.
And when we are then looking at at our unit, so at the consumer affairs unit, we're 2 people and the back office staff. And we got a voluntary advisory board, which is Christine Eisenschmidt, the head of Intel Germany, and Professor Heckmann, who is an IT security expert at Technical University of Munich recently, and Professor Turun from the Compolicy Institute in Berlin. So they are also providing their view of the industry and of academia, and we use our network to bring together experts from academia, from the companies together, to help the companies to incorporate technology to be more consumer friendly. And as on the other side, we're talking to the politics. If we see that anything is wrong or cannot be changed by teaching companies to be more friendly, perhaps there has to be more regulation on it. And we are also talking to NGOs, to consumer advocacy groups, to see, okay, what is the daily needs that they really get complaints about it, and asking for their ideas and talking with them about our ideas. So that's the mode how we work on a daily basis. And from that we have got 2 lines of actions that we use to address things.
Yeah, I can chip in there. So the first one being what we call corporate digital responsibility, which is a very new and kind of buzzy term. So what we're currently working on is what does it mean and how do companies really act on that? Because it's a dialogue that's been going on in Germany for maybe 1.5, 2 years. So now we did the first Germany-wide study on what do companies actually understand when we talk about corporate digital responsibility, and how far are they implementing strategies on becoming more ethical or more consumer friendly. But as we said before, we also always fund projects to actually get tools on the ground, and here we funded a data process modeler, which is now in the making, that helps companies to model and then visualize how they process personal data for their business goals and link the two. So I, as a consumer or as a consumer advocacy organization, can then go to the website of the company and see really not only the data protection information, but clearly how is the personal data the company is processing linked to their business goals, and am I fine with that?
Oh, that's very nice. So it's like, anyways, it's like it's like a great thing that you're doing, because it's such an important thing, and indeed it's also a very complex thing, as you also said at the beginning, Christian, and therefore it's very important to have an institution like yours and people like you who are then advocating for the people and doing something for the good of the people regarding this complex topic. So when I talk with people about this privacy and security issues, I often hear, or I have the impression that this is a particular German topic. Is this the case? Would you say that, or would you say, as you would probably have more experience and maybe a bigger picture there, would you say like, okay, now the people at least in Europe are caring, maybe the people in the US are not so much caring? So what would be your view? Is it something that is in particular interesting in Germany, or could you also imagine having the zd.b existing in America, zda?
Well, the ZDA would be a good idea, or ZDE for Europe, because the main job of the center is to bring together experts from different disciplines, and also from academia, from politics, and from economy. So that would be a good idea. But the center itself is concerned with economy and with people. If you're only looking at the people side, at the consumer side, well, Europe managed to have a GDPR. So that means that it seems that in Europe generally there is more of a respect for privacy and feeling that this is important. There's of course a crass contrast to the United States, and there is obviously also a difference in importance in the European countries. But the extent of this is, I think, not easy to describe.
But it's the fact that Germany was not really helpful in the negotiations around the GDPR and always wanted to lower standards. So I think there's a strong European voice. Yes. It's not that Germany is the privacy champion in Europe. Yes. You couldn't say that.
When you're looking at the privacy startups, the most active ones is Paris at the moment. There's many just going into compliance with GDPR, but also more interesting ideas.
Well, that's which is also probably from the cultural background of the society there, that they are maybe more into defending the rights of the people and so on, and also getting active at the same time. While the Germans are, to my impression, are often like, we want to defend them, but we do not want to get too active, so we want to stay in the traces that we had before a little bit.
Decide.
There's another thing that is rather German. It's our second approach. Which I all said, okay, we're going to do it by technology. We're helping them, the technology, to become more consumer friendly. That's the official name for that is privacy by design. So really have developed all your products from beginning to the end with privacy in mind, respect the user privacy, have total transparency. This is rather German.
And do you think we would need a special seal for that or something like that, or a label that the consumers can see it, like this traffic light approach for food where you say it's green, orange or red, that we would need an indicator for the privacy? Because it's always when you talk about the privacy, it's like it's something in the ambience and the people know, okay, I have to take care, but they are not aware of what is happening. And I mean, you talk about the website already, so where the people can look it up, which is good, but they still have to look it up. And if you would force them to have something on a product, do you think it would change the interaction, or would it be another label that people just don't care because everybody has it or doesn't have it?
I think you have both strong opinions on that issue.
I mean, when you're talking to consumer advocacy organizations, they are not very hot on creating a label. They don't see the impact. And when you're talking to companies, even ones that have a strong standing in privacy, they say, we do it, but really, for us, it's also really hard to talk about it, to really make a public marketing claim about that. So we're not so hard on the company side, on the labels either. So in reality, it was not going to happen. But still, the consumer has the problem of, I see a product, I cannot tell what the privacy implications of it are.
But I would argue that it shouldn't be the individual consumer's responsibility to recognize good privacy, because privacy is a human right. It's also written in the German constitution. So I think we have a massive lack of law enforcement. We have the law, we just don't enforce it. And I think this is really something we need to work on. And then I, as a consumer, I can maybe decide between different products that give me better margins of privacy. But the foundation, that has to be just clear by law enforcement and by law.
And so another topic that I always love to hear the opinion about from people is jurisdiction. So the law enforcement, so the judges. often have the impression that we would also need some training programs in digitization for them, because they have the law, the written law, and they sometimes for me seem to relate it with too little technological background in that direction. Do you have an opinion there?
Yeah, well, I got the impression that it's getting much better, that the there are judges which are really proficient with the technology, and then they can take good decisions. But it will get worse in direction, as you said, with the service becoming more international. If I got a problem, I want to sue somebody, and this somebody is a corporation or a network sitting in 3 different countries, not in Europe, I will have a big problem of enforcing. And when we think about the dimension of speed, because we're in a software world, so software can be changed very fast. I deploy an update tomorrow, and then my picture book is having a different functionality, and I'm doing something totally different. And the German approach is to say, okay, we change the laws, or the European approach, and this takes time. And then Mark Zuckerberg is in hearings, and he's talking about it. Do you have their ideas?
The Data Ethics Commission that just published its report in Germany has an opinion on that, and that would be that for critical automated system, the state needs to have a live access to the system. And this is something that is not, I say, beyond critique.
Yes.
Because it's also a very scary proposition.
Yes. Yeah.
I see there need to be some kind of automated checks and balances because it's working too fast. I just don't really see that it should be the state.
Yes.
It should be a third party that has no interest in controlling, for example, what is going on in the picture book and what opinions are spread there and which aren't. So we are always proposing that these kind of functions should be deployed by some third party that has no self-interest in how the things are solved, but has a mandate to solve them.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. And thinking in that direction. So I was just attending a film watching in Rennes recently, which was Le Bataille de Libre, and it was about open and free software. And this could also be something towards privacy, because when the people can look at the code, those that are able to, and we have many computer scientists in Germany or people who are interested in that, could do some checks, and with these checks they could install some balances. And so do you consider open source as something important towards security and privacy?
I'm a little bit reserved.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned there are many computer scientists that could look at the code, but the number of proportion is quite low. What is good for privacy? If you got free or open source software, you can make the tools yourself. You know how they work, and you have more transparency. This is of course helpful. And when we are doing a project, we are also including clauses to have the software developed there to be open source.
But you somehow have to make sure that people actually do the code review, and not that we have the principle of many eyes, but the practice of few eyes.
Yes. So the big challenge when you look at network world and algorithms doing decisions, you have to have layers where you can look into the system. The lowest layer is for engineers. Well, really nuts and bolts and the data flowing, and then you have more and more abstraction layers. And so usually you can pick an abstraction layer and see and understand what is going on. And also you have to have switches in these abstraction layers, because if you only have the lowest layer and everything runs on top, then one day you will be at a point where you cannot switch off the system or change the system because you don't understand how it works anymore. Then you have given the power to the machines if you want to be drastic. So you got to have layers and switches in there, which is part of the privacy philosophy when you see it, to still have control of the machine and the data.
Or also this human in the loop. So having someone there, which spawns another interesting aspect, which again brings us back to your start topic, namely complexity. So people are then able to take informed decisions, but at the same time, do they want to take the informed decisions? Are they are they willing to say? I mean, you said in the ultimate case they want to do that, but do you rather see that we need automation in these decision processes, like we had there was this web approach where you could define some policies and then the web browser was automatically negotiating? It did not really go through, I guess, in the end, so I think it vanished. But do you think it will go again more into that direction? So we have semi-automated or fully automated decisions based on standard profiles, and then Germany will define a standard safe user, and this is what will happen, and you will only be asked if you deviate from that. Do you have ideas in that direction?
I think it's not a bad idea to have these standard profiles, and you can have different organizations providing them, one by Facebook, one of the consumer advocacy NGO, and then you can kind of select from the organization, trust their knowledge. And if you're really crafty, you can go in there and say, okay, I don't want cookies at all, whatever. I always switch cookies off. Yeah. So that would be a good idea. But then you still have the automatic negotiation based on your preferences. And this is a system that could actually work as a future system to put my preferences into this automatics.
I really think we need those shortcuts, because if you look around as a consumer, if you want to take responsible and sustainable consumption decisions regarding your privacy, maybe environment, your finance and so on, you're overwhelmed. It's impossible to take everything in consideration. Yeah. A day has 24 hours.
Yes.
So we need those shortcuts to really help us be more responsible and be more sustainable.
And data, you said data is getting collected. Do we need more open data? I'm thinking into the direction of, it could be that the Alexas and Google Homes and whatever we have there, that they are sharing their training data, for instance, and then we would not have to record so many data and people could look at it and everything would be more open. Would that be something that you would, for instance, recommend to a company when you're talking to them and tell them, like, okay, transparency and maybe also sharing with others could be a good idea?
It's quite a difficult question to answer for me, also being data protection officer, because from a privacy standpoint, open data comes with some hooks, and especially from a law perspective, it's very difficult. But from a, let's say, humanitarian, egalitarian perspective, you need a lot of data to also see where, for example, discrimination happens. And there you need personal data to help people to get to their rights. And there we need to also realign a little bit our understanding maybe of data protection as my right to my data, and it has a larger benefit also. And it's really difficult to align those two, but I think this is the way we need to go.
You can also think about different types of data. The one you mentioned for to improve speech recognition, there you need speech recognition corpus, but this is a large corpus and it's not changing so much. It's there. Whereas we have the sensor stream, which is just a stream of data going from here to there. That's the daily data that's coming. For this, in my mind, it's more difficult to have this sharing character.
And when we think about, so in the end, it's about profiles. So it's about having a digital me. And could you imagine that in the future we might even have a trusted third party that is having my profile and sharing then something with the companies? I'm thinking, I might just elaborate a little bit, because I'm thinking, as you said at the beginning, so what we want to have is we want to have comfort services. So we want to have more comfort, and to have more comfort, it's of course beneficial when the system knows all the details it needs to know to bring me more comfort. At the same time, we want to have the privacy, so we don't want to share unnecessarily much information, so we want to have a minimum of this information. And so one idea could be to say, okay, we share a lot of information, but then it stays somewhere trusted or like local or decentralized, and then it's only that much is then automatically revealed that is needed. So is that a direction that you think it could go?
There is some efforts into this direction. The utilities, so the ones providing the gas and electricity in Germany, they think to reposition themselves as a data broker for this. For example, in Munich, they have a central smart city platform with the data, and they started to integrate their services and have fine-grained control over which data goes to where. So they, I think, are positioning themselves as a data broker. All the data about the citizens comes in, and they release it for the services as it's fit. And you can easily imagine them really releasing only this data, which is used also to third parties. At the moment, it's a closed system. So it's an interesting approach, but it's of course very, very complicated. You need very much IT savvy to pull this off. Yes. And there is big commercial interest also not to have this happen at the public utilities in the cities.
And I think there we really have to be careful that for the sake of controlling our data better, we don't just give it to this one central third party we all trust, and then it just doesn't work out at all. So I'm a very big proponent of having these data decentralized, and then having the third party is just the one who knows where it can take it and where it's allowed to take it.
Tim Berners-Lee has this approach with the decentralized, so kind of anti-Facebook, where it's all in your pod locally or at your own hoster, and you, if somebody wants to see it, you got to go to your own pod and read it from there.
Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook with a part of my identity.
And you?
I'm also on Facebook, but I'm probably gonna delete it by the end of the year. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I was also having, in one of the previous interviews, I was discussing with my friend Hassan, and we were talking about that at the beginning. I mean, we were also like joining Facebook when it was coming out, and at the beginning we were both very caretaking of what we put online. So I would also have answered, like 2 years ago, I would also have answered, I'm aware of what I have there, and it's really only a really selective part of me. And then both of us came to the point that at some point in time we were like, it's just not, it doesn't make too much sense anymore to do this, because somehow the online life and the offline life, they converged so much that we then stopped this behavior, not because we would want it to stop it, but more because from a practical perspective it was just not viable anymore to keep this separation. And we felt both a little bit relieved afterwards, because it was like, apparently nothing bad happened, and now we are more united to one persona again. So I don't know, do you have similar considerations, or as you said, you're very selective there? Do you think it's making sense? Because I always tell the people, okay, so you cannot protect, because in the end they are more powerful than you, so it's good when you're informed. So that means when something happens with your data, you're not like, oh my god, how do they know that about me? But you're more like, okay, probably they got the data like this and that, and therefore they have the information. Any thoughts in that direction?
No, but I think I'm still a long way from posting everything online.
I'm also not doing that, but before I was really selective in, when you want to give this and that information, and now I'm more like, I mean, I'm still a quite sparse poster, but I'm like, if I think I want to share, okay, this is a nice article with my friends, I just do it, and I'm not considering what profile, what they change.
The problem sometimes is not what you post or like on Facebook, but if your friends like certain things and post certain things, they can just calculate what you probably like. And this makes it a lot more complicated, and even if you're not on the network, they can make the connections and know things about you that you never actively gave into the net.
And this is also a very nice, interesting thing there that you mentioned. So in I think it was 1999 when the movie Public Enemy #1 was coming out, where we still had these tapes and all this thing, which is like total reality today. So I mean, today we would not be surprised of having all this, but the interesting thing there is also that that data is always, so recording data is cheap, so the data storage doesn't cost anything. And when I talk to friends that are not so tech savvy, I tell them like, yeah, well, the problem is not that at the moment no one cares about your data, but it's like, imagine you run for American president in 20 years, and then they want to find out some scandals, they will for sure have the data, and then they can do something against you. So this is more the problem, that like in the future, when tools come, or like machine learning, when it came, it was like, okay, now it's a powerful tool with a fuzzy logic that you can now start mining this data automatically, and then you can find out things about people that you would never have looked at because normally they're uninteresting, but now as you have the algorithms that basically do it for free or very fast, you can do that. So do you also see this data storage or data crakey thing of these data lakes as a problem in that direction, or do you see even more problems or other problems?
I mean, when you look at it, this data and the power could be abused by any government in the future. Mm-hmm. So yes, from a citizen perspective, this is a problem.
Mm-hmm. No, you don't have to look far anymore, even in Europe, to governments that totally would abuse or do abuse these data to enforce their policies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, looking at Egypt, there was a WhatsApp group or a Facebook group, I don't remember, on gay pride, 500 people, and the next government just imprisoned all these 500 people in the group because they knew they were interested in the topic or gay, and this was not acceptable anymore. So they went to jail. That's an extreme example.
About ethnic cleansing, you can so easily define a group and then know where to go and who really is part of that group. So it's really also something of control of digital weapons that are being exported to other countries. And then again also come the companies into play that are possessing this, like WhatsApp and Facebook is one company and so on. Okay, yeah, very interesting. And would you say now, from coming back a little bit more to the Bavarian perspective again, so first question that I wanted to ask before, but I just didn't ask, so is there like a German equivalent to this Bavarian, this Center for Digitization?
No, not really.
Okay,
so it's quite unique also as parts of Germany.
They're funding a similar center like this one in the land of Brandenburg right now, in Potsdam. But on a German level, it would be an institution that really coordinates between all the different ministries, and this is not something we have right now.
Okay, yeah, cool. And related to that, then the question, would you say that including privacy and security by design is at the moment an advantage for companies or a disadvantage? Because obviously it costs effort because they have to do that. I mean, you're supporting them, which is a great thing. But would you say it already pays off, or it's also related to the label we talked about before? Because is it visible? Are the customers then in the end, if we talk about companies, are they seeing it and valuing it in the sense that they prefer than those companies?
When we're looking at concrete examples, so we did privacy by design workshops for students, so as the future developers of systems all over Bavaria, and we had local companies there that already implemented privacy by design. And they were telling the students, okay, why we're using that? Because they see a competitive edge on this. So when you're looking at concrete examples, there's some companies that say, yeah, I do this for business reasons. When you're looking at it more from a broader perspective, when you did your interviews, you had, I think, similar results.
Yeah, it was really interesting because when we first started the study in corporate digital responsibility, we were aiming at business to consumer companies naturally because privacy, personal data, and so on. And then we found that a lot of, or even more business-to-business companies are really into these kind of topics because the consumer can only see so much. We had that before, we need shortcuts. But companies, they have large compliance departments that very closely look at where we buy software and do they fulfill all the privacy requirements, even especially now with the GDPR in place. So there we have a lot of professionals who really look do they do what they say in their data protection information and so on.
That's very interesting, because I was not aware of this aspect, but of course it's logical that in the B2B market it's even stronger, because they have to comply then to the rules that you help like shaping and making, very, very nice. And that brings us already a little bit to the end, namely what are the what is it that you now perceive when you think about this being human with algorithms? What does it mean to you living in the world with the digital transformation? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it threatening? Is it inspiring? I mean, we covered actually all the dimensions, and so just what is your personal thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's totally all of that.
Yeah,
of course. I think we need to learn much more about it, and everybody should. So we need much more data literacy, computational literacy, but also, as I said before, it can't be all the responsibility of individuals. So we need stronger collective actors who act really in our interests as consumers or as citizens. And then we can really reap all the benefits that digitalization can offer, be it using data to acting more sustainable, for example, decreasing energy consumption, increasing happiness, and all these kind of things that we could do with this awesome technology once we kind of get this step further.
Yeah. You want to add something?
Yeah, well, I'm looking from a personal perspective at the algorithms and what happens.
Yeah.
For me, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So still, I got into computer science because I want to know how the algorithms work. So each time I see a decision, I want to know, how did this come to happen? What's the mechanism? What's the data behind it?
Yeah.
And when I look at the trends in the algorithms and the data, one term I like is peak information access.
What's that?
That means it's like peak oil. What is the maximum amount of information for me I can access? And I think we are past that point, because the internet gets more crowded. It's more difficult to find relevant information, to find non-marketing information. On the other side, the companies that had open APIs to pull data are closing this data down. They want to have it for themselves. I cannot go any more freely to Google and say, okay, give me the search terms of the last year to find any trends. I got to be a researcher and apply to a portal to do that. So the data is getting more scarce, even though there is more data. Hence why peak information access.
Wow. Very interesting and very, very interesting topics that we covered. And we would love if you also have questions and comments to discuss with you in the comment section below. And for now, I really thank you a lot. It was a very, very interesting interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.